This episode is sponsored by Day by Day Book, a guided journal that helps you navigate the ups and downs of change while creating a life you love. For more information on the classic, recovery, or teen daybook, go to livedaybyday.com.
Everybody processes alcohol differently, and we drink for different reasons. And we have reasons of our own, especially as we get older. This matters way more to me than a drink. I want to feel better tomorrow. I want to wake up. I want to be productive. I want to go through my day being able to manage my energy and not get to the end of the day. And the only option that I see to feel better or escape is to drink alcohol. Like, we know how that works, right? Especially if you've been doing it for a bit, you know how that cycle works. It's the same thing over and over again. So if you want different for yourself, baby steps, like I said, you got to take it really slow and you got to take it day to day, and don't get too far ahead of yourself. Just know that any relationship that is going to remain in your life is going to remain whether you're drinking or not, if it's supposed to.
Welcome to the Go Go Bistro podcast, where we dish up inspiration for women who are hungry for change and ready to make it happen. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. This is a space to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing is off the table. I'll be serving up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and share my interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they've learned along the way. So join me at my favorite little two-top, pull up a chair, and let's get started. There are certain changes in life that are unavoidable. For women, menopause is one of them. Otherwise known as the change, menopause can make us feel like a stranger in our own bodies. It can bring about unanticipated shifts in sleep, mood, health, and our general outlook on life in so many ways. Since it typically begins in our late 40s, early 50s, it can show up at a time in our lives when we are already gaining a different perspective on our health and, in some cases, what we want to create for our future. On our show today, Lori Massicot shares how menopause was the catalyst to getting sober, a behavior change she knew needed to happen, and how it led her to become an influential and powerful voice for women over 50 who are living alcohol-free. Lori is the Midlife Sobriety Coach on a mission to raise awareness toward the life-changing impact of sobriety as we age. She is a certified life, recovery, and nutrition coach specializing in helping women in midlife feel better inside and out without relying on alcohol to get them there. Lori hosts the highly popular 250 and Beyond podcast, where she and her guests highlight the beauty of aging and the freedom of living alcohol-free. She's a homebody, 80s music fan, and a Southern California native, where she lives with her husband, son, and their sweet pup, Beatrice. Lori, welcome to Go Go Bistro.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Noelle.
Thanks for joining us. So, Lori, I know you and I have known each other for several years now within the sobriety circles. I think we met at a She Recovers conference, or maybe just before then, and we met up there because we were early birds getting coffee in the lobby.
I remember that. I was up early getting my coffee. Weren't you on the podcast before that, or did that come after She Recovers? Because that was 2017.
Maybe I was. Yes. Okay.
2019. No.
Oh my gosh. Everything is like a blur because of the pandemic. I really feel like it's all very confusing. Well, anyways, we knew each other, but we hadn't met in person. I think that was what it was.
That's right. And it was 2017, She Recovers. And then I started the podcast in 2018. So there's no way you would have been on it before that.
Okay, perfect. Maybe it was something about our coffee conversation that made you want to ask me to be a guest. I don't know.
It was, definitely.
It's been a while. But I would say, even though those of us that know you as a friend and as someone that we've shared the same journey with to some degree, I think you are also someone who has such a profound effect on women that you coach. So I'm just so happy to have you here with us to talk a little bit about your story, which, by the way, I love your story because it brings together two very big things, big changes, big changes. So I thought maybe to get us started, Could you maybe talk a little bit just about your experience with menopause, and then we can kind of dive into that, then how that made you kind of take a different look at your drinking?
Absolutely. And thank you for that nice intro and your kind words. I love this for you. I love you as a podcast host. You're just amazing. Thank you so much. My perimenopause journey, because, perimenopause is what happens before we actually hit menopause. Menopause is one day. And I'm not a doctor or anything. I just did a lot of research on it because of my experience going through it. But menopause is one day, and it's the last day of a year after your last period. So on that day, that's your year anniversary. I haven't had a period for a whole year. Woohoo! Now that's menopause. And then the next day you're post. It's like, that's how it works.
I did not realize that. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of women don't. I sure didn't. But my perimenopause, I want to say, started probably in my late 30s, but I wasn't aware of it. So I noticed a lot of mood changes. And at that time I was drinking pretty heavily. And then as I got into my early 40s, then I started noticing some other things happening that I just thought, I don't know what's going on with me. Very interesting things. And my mom passed away when I was 42. And right after that, I really just noticed so many changes. And of course, I was grieving, or I was trying to grieve. I was drinking a lot more at that time. And I just thought, what the heck is going on with me? So I went to the doctor, and I was not going to the doctor. I'm not a huge fan of doctors anyway, but back then I was not visiting a doctor regularly. And I told them, this is what's happening. I'm having a lot more anxiety than normal because I do have anxiety. And, I wasn't getting any answers. And they would do blood work and they would say, no, your hormones are fine. Because I started researching one day, I Googled, or my cycle started to kind of be a little bit off, right? Just was like a little bit, because I was always 28 days. So I started Googling, why is this happening? And the first thing that came up is perimenopause. I said, oh, no way. I'm too young. I'm too young. Had no idea what age you were even supposed to be around when you were at that stage of life, right? We don't get taught this in high school.
No, we do not.
You need to. And so, long story short, I really started researching, and around 43 is when I started to get into the full-blown cycles were off. I would go months without one, and then they would start back up again. Like I said, the mood was a big thing for me because my mood was so erratic. I wasn't sleeping very well. I had quite a bit of extra weight on me at that time. And I don't want to say that about weight or anything, because that's not what I'm talking about. It was the mental weight and then also the physical weight. And this came from, having my son when I was 33. I carried that extra weight for a decade. And, I was tired. I was really tired. I was stiff and, like I said, anxious. I had almost all, if you look up perimenopause symptoms, I think there's 35. I think I had like 45. And I laugh about that now, but at the time it was really scary. And so anybody who's out there that's going through this, I say, educate yourself. And if you don't get the answers from your doctor, go to a different doctor.
Well, and so how long did that last for? Was that several years of just kind of that discomfort?
Yes, I would say, I'm trying to remember now. I'm 55 now, and I had my last period when I was late 40s, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it lasted for quite a bit. And in between then, of course, like you had said in the beginning, that was the catalyst that really started to push me into really looking at my drinking. But in between then, I did stop drinking and I did notice an improvement. But, still, I wasn't taking any kind of hormone replacement therapy. I haven't taken anything. And so it was really about lifestyle changes for me.
Was there a moment in time? Was there something like, it sounds like you stopped drinking to kind of try and, regulate or maybe balance things out a little bit? I know myself, when you feel kind of crummy, it's like, how do you get to a place where I can feel more myself and a little bit more balanced? Did you feel like that helped when you stopped drinking? Like, what was the sort of impetus for you to decide to do that for good?
Well, I started tracking my perimenopause in a journal in May of 2013. Because like I said, my cycles were all over the place. If I was going to go to the doctor, I wanted to let them know what was happening. I had a lot of headaches at the time. So I was literally tracking I took 2 Excedrin today. I took, like all of it. I was tracking what I was eating. I started really paying attention because I really, and I don't want to scare anybody because we all experience this differently, but I felt the worst that I never even imagined feeling in my entire life going through that time. And the alcohol was just adding to it. But I wasn't aware of that. I started drinking when I was 14. That's what everybody did at that time. I started tracking my perimenopause in this journal. On the front of the journal, it said, "Don't take my sunshine away." It was like a $7 journal I got at Walmart. And that's how I felt. Like, don't take my sunshine away, perimenopause. Let me find it again. And so I started tracking, and then I started writing, "You're drinking last night. You drank so much. You don't remember." All these things started coming out in this journal, which you and I have talked about. You were just on my podcast about the importance of journaling. That's when I started, Noelle. That's when the journal came into my life. And then by August of 2013, I made that decision only because I knew that I had tried to moderate. I had tried to place so many rules on my drinking, setting a lot of boundaries with alcohol, and it wasn't working. For the number one fact is that I don't want to moderate. I'm not that kind of drinker. And so I realized, one night, August 11th, 2013, I had no intention of quitting that night. I just said, I don't think I can keep this going. It was very emotional, very hard. And after that, baby steps, just baby steps.
Did you have any idea? I mean, it sounds like this was a life change, but something that any of us that have been through sobriety and early sobriety, especially that first, 6 months to a year is somewhat of a fog in terms of just like getting our bearings and being, it's a life change, but it's also just everything change in terms of your thinking, and that all takes time. But did you feel like there was ever a moment in time during that early sobriety that you said, gosh, I want to do something with this? Like, I've stopped drinking, but how can I move forward in a different way in my life in terms of just what you do now with other women?
Oh, no, not back then. No, in the first 6 months, I was still going back and forth with myself, honestly. It was, I think that at the time when I quit, my husband and I, we've been married. We've been together 26, almost 27 years. And at the time when I quit, we did a lot of drinking together. I met him in a bar in 1997. And so, we did a lot of drinking together. And I told him, I think I need to quit. And he said, I don't think that you need to quit drinking. But if you do, I'm going to do it as well. I'll do it with you. And we did. And about 90 days in, he said, yeah, there's a big difference in how I was acting and reacting to people and to everything, right? And then I started to say, okay, is this going to be forever? And, anybody who is in early sobriety, when we get tripped up on that forever thinking, and what is that going to look like in 10 years? What am I going to do when my son, who was 12 at the time, gets married? What will I ever do? I'm not going to be able to have fun at that wedding.
Oh, that's so, yes.
All of that, Noelle, started coming up. And so, no, I wasn't thinking I could help anybody else. I was just trying to help myself stay on track.
I think you bring up something that's really important, and this is for anybody who has gotten sober or anybody who's contemplating getting sober. I feel like, it's a mixed bag out there of people that have spouses that still drink when they stop drinking. And I mean, that's a dynamic that can be really tricky, because how do you navigate that? You have alcohol in the house. When we think about those early stages of sobriety, that can cause a lot of challenges. And so that's really cool that he did that, and that I'm assuming he's still sober, or he's still not drinking, but even doing that in your early stages is super, super helpful.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I would have been able to do it without him. And I say that being honest, completely honest. And then I also encourage women to do it without their husbands or their partners, because it's not a requirement. Sure, it would be so helpful. And if everybody in the world would just stop drinking while I was stopping drinking, right? Like, the stores took it out. Nobody on TV was going to be drinking, so I would have to watch them drink, right? Like, in a perfect world, that's what would happen. But no, with my husband, yes, absolutely. He has never referred to himself as sober. And he drinks maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Like, he just got off of a work trip, and, he goes and he enjoys his drinks, and that's it, and I've been around him while drinking. It just, he doesn't drink nearly. It's a fraction of what he used to.
That also speaks to, as you get further and further into sobriety, those trigger points go away. To some degree, not for everybody, and maybe different timing for each person, but it feels like there's not that emotional charge necessarily that you probably would have felt in that first year too. So that's for somebody around you drinking, because we have a world full of drinkers, and we don't want to take everybody's fun away either. People think it's fun to drink.
No.
Like, it's just our choice. It's our choice.
Exactly. And like you said earlier, it's time. Time is your best friend. We always have to remind ourselves, man, when my son turns, whatever age he's going to be, and if he gets married, I don't even care. I mean, at this point, do you? I'm going to have all those tools. I'm going to have all that experience by then. So I don't need to be worrying about this on, day 13, but it's normal too. I think we should expect it, because if we go into it expecting, I won't think about drinking because I just decided to stop, it's very unrealistic.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that for everybody, the journey is different, right? So it's hard to tell people, and you and I both know this with clients that we've worked with, you can't predict that for someone, what it's going to be like for them. Everybody has their own path, right? And it's pretty much each day is going to be different. And each day is going to get you closer to a place that's more comfortable, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
When I think about you starting your podcast, because I feel like you've done so many things since this. So I want you to kind of walk us through the journey of how you kind of went from stopping drinking, and then how did you shift and sort of pivot towards doing the work you're doing now?
So I quit in 2013. In 2015, I decided in April of 2015, actually, that I was going to get on Instagram. And I wanted to get on Instagram because I was doing a Whole30, which is a kind of an elimination diet. It's very strict for 30 days. If you've never heard of it, you could Google Whole30. And so I thought, let me get on Instagram and create an account and start talking about this, because I'm all for accountability. Noelle, I used to blog, and I blogged when I was scrapbooking, and I loved to scrapbook. And I had this blog, and I would post weekly. And, I think my aunt was my number one reader, but I did it because it kept me accountable to doing my layouts and everything. I just love it. And so I did this, and I thought, well, I don't want anybody to know that I'm doing it. My friends. I don't want anybody who's on Instagram. And I wasn't on Instagram before. I really thought that was just like for the Kardashians. I didn't know that regular people were on there talking. I thought it was celebrity stuff, And so I thought one day, I don't even know what I was doing, but I thought of the name 250 and beyond, because I wanted to get in the best shape of my life before I turned 50. And at that time, oh gosh, I was 48, I guess. I was around 48. So I thought, I want to get in the best shape of my life. I'm going to open up this Instagram account. I'm going to call it 250 and beyond. I'm not going to put my name anywhere on it, so nobody will know that I'm posting. And I started posting. And then what I realized is that other people were talking about sobriety. And I don't even know how that got connected. I really don't. And so I thought it was just like, there was one gal, her name was Teresa. She lived up north in San Francisco. And she was talking about, she was in long-term recovery, and I clicked with her. And I guess that's where I heard about it, because she was really into fitness. So we found each other somehow. I don't know how these things work.
It's all connected, isn't it?
I'm sure we connected through either Facebook or Instagram. That's where we connected. I'm positive of it. And then I just saw her talking about it, and I thought, I got that hit, and I thought, I think this is my next step. I think I really do need some more accountability and support in this area of my life. Because 2 years in, I was feeling a lot better, but no one around me was doing what I was doing. Nobody was. And so I was very happy to create that account. And from there, boy, it just led into so many different avenues for me. I started learning more about personal development and really getting into podcasts and listening to podcasts. I hadn't done that before. And I thought, I don't know, one day I'm going to have a podcast. I just had this vision. One day I'm going to have a podcast, and I'm going to talk about menopause, and I'm going to talk about drinking and not drinking and aging. I just want to talk about all of it, because I'm very shy and introverted, and I'd like to have very honest, real conversations. I don't like superficial conversations with people. And my friend group, I would always, want to talk about things and ask questions and stuff. And it wasn't this reciprocated. It wasn't that. It was very like, oh, you ask a lot of questions, I had that growing up my entire life. I thought, well, that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to get to know each other.
Curiosity is a good thing.
Curiosity, yes. Yeah. So I thought, Well, this little shy introvert, she's going to start her own podcast and I'm just going to talk. I'm going to see what happens. And I'll probably never interview anybody because I can't imagine doing that. And then I fell in love with the whole process, the whole thing. I'm like, I'm hooked.
What I love about your story about starting your podcast that you told me was that you started it in your closet. Was it literally in your closet?
Yeah, on my iPhone, because I didn't know how else to do it. And then I remember when I did my first interview, it was with Sandra Primo of the Unruffled podcast. And she helped me like set up my mic and everything. Oh my gosh, Sandra, I love her so much. She helped me so much in like setting things up because I was on their podcast in 2017. And I said on their podcast, I forgot about that, I'm going to start my podcast in 2018. I had no intention of even saying that. And once I said it, I thought, there's my accountability, right?
Yes, yes. You put it out there.
So anyway, it was a long process, but you know what? It's so simple, which is what I told you. You know, if you make it simple, it's going to be simple. If we make things so complex, it's going to be very complex. And as I've gotten older, I have to simplify everything because the overwhelm of looking at something, and especially sobriety, especially menopause and aging, if we're looking at next year or even tomorrow or the week ahead, it's too overwhelming. We have to learn how to really be mindful and be present in each day and what's happening during that day. And it's such a practice for me. I'm not that great at it, but it's such a practice. And so I just think I still have to remind myself of that with the podcast. Like, you're still learning. It's been 5 years, but you're still learning all kinds of things.
It's so amazing, though, the fact that you've had it. So it's been running for 5 years now. When did you start coaching?
That same year, 2018, because somebody reached out to me and I didn't go into it thinking I was going to have a coaching business, but a gal reached out to me, Noelle, and we're still working together. We just had a call yesterday and I love her so much. And she is now going on 5 years sober in the summer. And wow. She reached out. She said, you know what? We're totally different personalities too. She says, I really resonated with you and I would love to get your help. And I thought, okay, it was in my mind to do this. I hadn't got my certifications or anything yet, but it was more of like a life coaching thing. And you know, we just kind of worked through what was happening with her. And eventually she made the decision, I'm going to go all in. I'm not going to drink anymore. And it was a hard decision. And like I said, we've just been working together ever since. So that really kicked it off. And then, you know, slowly I've been growing it because that takes such a long time to grow a coaching business. And I think it's just really about, you know, keeping my education going, learning, and, you know, how I can best support. And then also just taking on very small groups of people each year. That's been, you know, kind of my learning process through all of it.
What I think is so interesting too is that when shifts like that are made, where you kind of jump into something, like you said, the podcast, and in a way you have to kind of not even talk yourself through it, but make it less of a big leap by just saying, this is just the next thing I'm going to try, right? This is just something I'm going to check it out. What's the worst thing that could happen, right? But I think what's so important about what you do is that you have developed a business. And that's sort of been organic, right? It's like you started the podcast. Okay, this is good. I'm helping people. I'm bringing my curiosity to the table. But then now you have this ability to help change women's lives. And it doesn't have to have a specific, what's your end goal in 10 years kind of thing. It's like, no, I'm just following what I do, following what feels good. But did you have a moment like in this time where you shifted from getting sober, you start the podcast, so you're taking some leaps, right? Did you have any internal moments where you just kind of sat back and was like, wow, was there any kind of talk with yourself in terms of like, this is the next step for me, or wow, this feels good? Or did you have any of those moments where you kind of felt that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I still feel like that. I still, when you talk about like, having your, finding your passion and finding your mission in life, I don't know. I think that we all have different passions and different missions, and those reveal themselves as we get older, especially. But this is one that I don't see myself walking away from anytime soon at all, because I know how many women out there at this stage of life, because I do specifically help women in midlife and beyond, I like to say, need that support and need the awareness, because that's why I always say, bringing awareness, because a lot of people don't even know that, hey, not drinking is an option for everybody. It's not just from, what we thought growing up, the stigma and the stereotype of somebody who doesn't drink. it's expanded. And so I really do feel like that. And then on the other side of that, Noelle, is that imposter. And almost every time I sit down to like do an interview like this, or I sit down to do my group coaching calls, and I always think, wait a minute, you're actually helping people not drink. Like, when did this happen? How did this happen? I'll never take it for granted. It's weird. It's really weird. Something like you got to like kind of wrap your head around, there's always two sides to the coin. And I think that if we deny ourselves just being really honest with ourselves and saying, I don't know, maybe somebody else should leave this group coaching call today. Maybe it shouldn't be me.
But see, that's the beauty of it it's the beauty of it because there's a humility to it, but there's also that feeling of knowing that you're creating change. And that I think kind of trumps that. We all have imposter syndrome, right? But if we can kind of get out of our own way and realize we're just being of service, like that's all we're doing. And it's back to kind of simplifying things, like simplify it into I'm being of service. But also I think we have so many years before we get to a place that we find out what we're really good at. Some people are lucky enough to find it in their 20s. Others of us maybe later in life. And so it's kind of like, wow, this is super easy. Oh, that's weird. Never thought that it was going to be that. I was just going to step into this and then suddenly here I am.
Absolutely. That's the thing with change. We just never know. It's so gradual and it's not linear. It's so just those little changes throughout the day. And the thing, I think the most important thing is to allow ourselves to look back and say, I've come a really far way. I've come a really long way. I've done a lot of work. Because if we don't do that, then what's the point? It's not acknowledging how far we've come. It's always like stacking up. Oh, well, this is the next benchmark. I'm always reaching, which I am. But, it's just also reflecting back and saying, just having those moments where you come in and you go, oh, wait a minute. This is kind of odd. Like last week, I was interviewed for a big summit and, they were talking to me about sobriety and everything. And I was the featured sobriety coach for this summit coming up. And just, I had that moment before. I'm like, this is just, I will never take it for granted, but it's also a trip. It's a trip.
Yes.
This is not what I pictured doing with my life. Yeah. And that's the beauty of change.
Well, with your clients, this is kind of one thing that always strikes me as kind of, I don't know, interesting is when you have a lot of exposure to women that are maybe in their 50s, mid 50s, whatever. Are there particular fears that come up just about change in general, right? Because I think as we get older, we become, I think, a little bit more, set in our ways. And so change can sometimes feel more daunting than maybe when we were in our 20s and anything goes and you can kind of, well, I'll do this, I'll do that. Do you find that there is any particular fear? And it could be around sobriety, but just that comes up more often than not with clients that you work with.
Absolutely. I think the biggest fear is honestly losing relationships, especially when it comes to not drinking. And the people that we used to drink with, that's a big fear. That keeps a lot of women drinking in their home, at work. That's a big thing, drinking at work and work events, and then in their friend group, because women get to this stage of life and they've been drinking with the same people for a long time. And that's one of the biggest fears is that change. Am I going to be left out? And we will always want to belong somewhere, no matter what our age is, belonging is such an important feeling. And if you feel like I may not belong with these people, or maybe what I experienced is I'm not sure if I ever did after I quit drinking. I'm not sure. It's very scary. It is scary. And I think as we get older, we have to look at that too, because, we have that fear of being alone and we don't want to be left out. And so, yeah, I would say that's the biggest one.
Do you give them kind of any advice in terms of what to do to overcome some of those fears? Because I think connection and community are a biggie, especially in sobriety, of like finding that sort of new tribe of people that have common, not necessarily just common interests, but, that are going through similar experiences. And then you kind of start to develop new community. But is there anything specific you tell them to kind of do as step one?
Honestly, the thing like we kind of talked about earlier with, if your husband or your partner, or your wife, if they're drinking and they're telling you also what, kind of what my husband had said, you don't need to quit drinking. The signs were there. Like this was something that needed to change in my life. If they're telling you that, it makes it that much more difficult. We got to always remember, everybody processes alcohol differently and we drink for different reasons. And we have reasons of our own, especially as we get older. This matters way more to me than a drink. I want to feel better tomorrow. I want to wake up. I want to be productive. I want to go through my day being able to manage my energy and not get to the end of the day. And the only option that I see to feel better or escape is to drink alcohol. Like, we know how that works, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you've been doing it for a bit, you know how that cycle works. It's the same thing over and over again. So if you want different for yourself, baby steps, like I said, you got to take it really slow and you got to take it day to day, and don't get too far ahead of yourself. Just know that any relationship that is going to remain in your life is going to remain whether you're drinking or not, if it's supposed to. And I know that's easier said than done, trust me. But my goodness, if we're constantly trying to please others by drinking, what kind of relationship is that?
Right. Well, and I always like to say, it doesn't really matter what you have in your glass. At the end of the day, that's really all it is. It's like if you're at a party, it doesn't matter. Yes, society places this sort of, I don't know, there's something about drinking and our culture that is, the thing to do. But at the end of the day, it's literally what's in my glass. If what is in my glass is different than yours, who cares? But I think it takes people time to get to that place. And you're right, community is a big deal.
Let me talk about that real quick, because I do have a community, and I've always had a community. It seems like, because I started group coaching also in 2018. I opened up a little Facebook group. I charged $18 for a week workshop, because I thought, I think I want to do this now. This is like the next step. And having the women together in that group was like, this is it. Like, I loved it so much. And so I've always had a community. I don't have anything like a self-study program or anything, because I do feel like that is the number one thing a lot of women at this stage of life are missing out on. And that makes the biggest impact in doing it and going alcohol-free later in life. And so, yes, community and having that connection is so important. So if you're not getting it at home, that's what I was going to say. If you're not getting it at home or within your friend group, you don't have to ditch them. But add right. some friends who are working on the same thing as you, because that is always so helpful. You can't go wrong when you're around other people who are doing something that you want to do as well.
No, not at all. Now, speaking of community, what is kind of next for you? I know that you had mentioned that you're launching something new.
I just launched last week, Team Alcohol Free. Team Alcohol Free is what I call it.
Love it.
And
I love it.
It came to me last summer because it is like a team. I get on these calls with these women and we brainstorm and we come up with tools to help us improve our lives, improve our day. Actually, it's just like, let's start with a day.
Yes.
And so, I had my launch last week. And I have a great group of women. I have all their names on Post-its behind my computer here who have joined so far. And, I don't know when this episode will air, but it'll be opened, a few times throughout the year if anybody wants to check it out. But I've already been on 2 calls with them, and they're so good. It's so good. And it's so cool to see them relating to each other and connecting with each other. And, there's different levels. Some people have been, sober for a while, and other people are starting out or they're struggling. And so I do think that women, especially at this stage of life, it's not what you can get from the community so much. It's what you can give back. Because I think that everybody has something to bring to a community, because there's so much wisdom and experience in a room of midlife women. It's incredible. And, just being vulnerable and sharing our stories, that's where I believe it has to start.
Well, and I love that too, because being over 50 is an experience, I feel. It's an experience, and getting sober is an experience. So you've got sort of this double whammy of women that they're in a new phase of life, but they're also learning and growing and getting to know themselves in a different way in sobriety. So what a cool, I just think that's a great opportunity for people to really share on a completely different level.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I do too. Aging and alcohol free. Yes.
Yeah.
The super combo.
Now, Lori, I'm putting all the links to your social media on the notes, the podcast notes. So those will be out there. Is there anything else that you are getting ready to do other than building your community? You've got your coaching practice. Is there anything else going on that we should know about?
No. I've streamlined this
travel?
year, Noelle. That's all I'm working on. Any travel? Oh, yes. I think we're going to do a big trip to New York in the winter, maybe this year. We're going to maybe do late fall, winter to New York. And then, possibly some little trips during the summer. We moved to San Diego last year, so I feel like I'm always on vacation in this area. And, we just take advantage. We just take advantage of being in San Diego. I love it. And yeah, that's it. I think that it's already March 30th when we're recording this. The first quarter is done. So it's just really being mindful and present because time is flying and I just want to enjoy. I want to soak it all up.
I love that, Lori. I love that. I want to thank you so much for joining me and all of us today. This has been such an experience. And I love to continue to hear what's going on with you because I feel like, I don't know, you're one of those people that I know that has this energy of, let's do it. Let's go for it. You've done that with me. I mean, you've been so supportive. And I love that you have that energy. And so I just can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on your podcast. Yes, you're going for it.
We're going for it. That's what change is all about, right?
That's what it's all about.
Okay. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Noelle.
On that note, until we meet again. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word. So more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.